by saying, first of all, congratulations on the new album, but first of all, and congratulations on 10 years in the industry as well. Congrats.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's been an interesting journey.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about that journey. If when you first started out, if anyone had said to you that you were still going to be going strong after 10 years, what would you have said to them?
I would not have believed them at all, a single moment of it. Because when I first started the band, it was just as like a solo side project for me, because I was in a friend's band at the time. And I had these ideas that didn't quite jive with what he wanted to do, so I started Dead Animal Assembly Plant just as a way for me to kind of like exercise my own demons. I did that for a few years, and so when eventually I wanted to start doing live shows is when I cobbled together a live band, because I didn't want it, just be me on stage with a microphone and a laptop.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly paid off. And what would you say has been your biggest highlights over those years? Like, your music, I know, has changed the lives of a lot of people, but what would be the biggest highlights for you personally over those 10 years?
Oh God, it's hard to narrow down a particular highlight, because there's been a lot of these moments where, it's almost like this out of body experience where in this moment that it's so kind of like intensely exciting that you kind of remove yourself and you're kind of looking on the outside looking in, and it's very surreal, and you're like, is this reality? Is this happening to me? Like being able to play with some of my musical idols, like being able to play with Pig, which is also amazing to me, to being on the same labels that they're on right now. It kind of blows my mind, because like Raymond Watts is one of the musicians that I as a youngin always kind of strive to be like. His lyrical content and his style of music always drew me to it. So to be able to do a show with him was phenomenal.
Yeah.
And also playing Wasteland Weekend, which is this huge post-apocalyptic festival out in the Mojave Desert in California, and just being able to experience something of that intense caliber with how amazing everyone is there, but playing on a stage as like spitting fire in the middle of the desert while there's a Thunderdome over there, and people are just going crazy, and you have like multiple pits, and then all of a sudden after your set they bring in a junky car on a crane and they throw it down in the middle of the crowd and everyone starts banging on it. Like, it's one of those things that you just kind of have to pinch yourself to really believe that you're there. So I could ramble on forever about all these different kind of surreal moments that I've had since doing live shows, especially.
Yeah. Sharing a stage with an idol like Pig for you, what is that like? Like, how do you get those nerves under control, and what happens if you wander backstage and run into them?
I don't really get my nerves under control. I still, even after all these years, I still get very nervous before shows, whether we're playing in front of 5 people or 500 or 5,000. There's still a lot of nerves. But those shows that have some kind of exceptional importance to me, like I'm playing with an artist that I admire so much, yeah, it's really easy to get inside your head. But for me, I try to channel that in a way that is positive, not get lost in my own head where I start messing up. But I will admit, when I first met, like Raymond Watts, for example, he was insanely nice. Like, they always say, like, oh, don't meet your idols, which I get, because if they end up being a total jerk, then it kind of it can ruin a lot of things.
Yeah.
But he was so generous. He actually walked up to us and introduced himself. Because I'm like, I don't want to go bother him. I don't want to I will fanboy. I know I will fanboy out, and I'm not going to do it. I'm going to maintain my composure. But he was incredibly generous and very sweet. And this is something I've noticed over the years, that the most confident, accomplished musicians that I've had the pleasure of meeting, even if it was briefly, have been the nicest. It's like they don't have something to prove. They don't have to go around. They know what accomplished, and they don't have to go around being a jerk to everyone. They can just have this sense of humility but confidence at the same time, which I think is a really important balance to have.
Definitely, definitely. And now, of course, we'll bring it back to the new album. So many people were eagerly anticipating this album coming out. Did you feel a little bit of pressure with this album because of that anticipation?
I didn't. This album was interesting because we had been working on it over the years for a while, like, starting to create skeletal tracks and picking off some of the songs here and there. But we managed to finish it late 2019, right before we went on tour, and handed it off to the sound engineers to be mixed and mastered. And so by the end of 2019, it was completely done. It was in the can. And that's when Armalite approached me about wanting to pick up the album for the label. And so we had a release date all planned out. But lo and behold, 2020, well, we know what happened. The whole world kind of blew up. Yep. So it had been done for over a year. So they wanted to sit on releasing it until things calmed down, which made sense to me. There was so much going on, especially here in the States. It was like the swell of the pandemic. Then there were all the protests that were going on. And I'm from the Pacific Northwest, outside of Portland. And Portland was like the epicenter of a lot of these really violent clashes between protesters and the federal government. So there was so much going on that it made more sense to kind of hold off on it. So actually having it out now, it was less pressure, and it's just more of a huge relief, kind of like a catharsis, like a big sigh.
Yeah.
That finally we could have this out, and while things are still kind of crazy, they've kind of leveled off to a point where I think you can get people's attention more, rather than screaming in a burning theater, "Hey, listen to my new album!"
Yeah. So what was 2020 like for you personally? Because, of course, we had the pandemic, which saw where I live in lockdown for 8 months. But you also had the violence that happened in the States, as you said, nearly on your doorstep. So what was 2020 like for you personally?
2020 was such a bizarre year, and it definitely it thrust you into this sense of reflection. You shift your priorities when you see something. You realize how fragile all of society is, that it does not take much pressure for everything just to collapse, that you have this illusion of everything kind of having some sense of stability, but really is constantly teetering on the edge of oblivion. And I think 2020 definitely just put a big spotlight on how I saw myself and the and it was hard to stay busy, because you go stir crazy, but I did attend some of the protests. It was the first time I ever got tear gassed. I would not recommend it to anyone.
Yep.
10 out of 10 would not do again. 2020, I guess the silver lining to 2020 is we still worked on new music. We also did a collaboration with these Belgian artists called Mothmeister. They released a second art book, and we actually wrote a 9-track soundscape soundtrack that complements their art book. So we found different ways to keep busy. We started, me and one of the other bandmates, we started doing a Twitch stream, which it helped keep us sane. It kept us, you have to kind of think outside the box to stay relevant, because this is a very fickle world, very fickle society, and it's easy for people to kind of forget who you are, to fade into the background. So it's definitely forced us to think of ways to stay relevant, to stay a part of the conversation, so people just don't forget you.
Yeah. Did the events of the year also make you creative? Like, did you want to sit down and write about what was happening at the time as well, or was that the last thing on your mind?
No, actually, it was. I mean, it's a good question, because that's another thing that 2020 actually really kind of brought out is other forms of art, artistic expression. For me personally, I started painting again. I hadn't done that in years, so I started painting again. I started exploring different avenues of music creation. And also, stuff like I started sewing, making custom bandanas. So it was really fun in a sense that since there wasn't this constant pressure to be doing shows, touring, things like that, there's this time to kind of step back and breathe, because 2019 was such a crazy year for us. That was our first national tour. We were on the road for 6 weeks, just grinding it out, and to come to this huge, abrupt stop come 2020, it really kind of pushed you into this, all right, what else can I do to help stave off madness, or I'm going to literally go crazy?
Yeah. Then, is there any end in sight for you guys over there at the moment? Because for us here, we've had a couple of shows being held, but they're kind of been the shows where the crowd's got to be seated, which doesn't really work for heavy music. But in the last couple of weeks, we've had the Melbourne International Comedy Festival here, and I have to say, for the first time, it feels like our city is back open again. You walk around the streets, like last night I had dinner in one of the laneway restaurants and nobody was wearing masks, and it just felt like everything was alive again. How far off do you think Portland is, for example, for that feeling to come back, and how long before you can tour again?
That's a good question, because the states are so, scattered in terms of how they feel they prioritize the health of the citizens. In a place like the whole West Coast, the whole West Coast is basically a giant state. Washington, Oregon, California. I mean, our politics are very similar. So it's interesting because we all kind of bounce off of each other as far as how things are opening. Are we having different waves? There's this sense of kind of an altered normal going out now, because you can go out to bars, you can go out to restaurants, you can sit inside. Granted, you have to wear your mask. They have a super limited capacity. Going out to a dance club, you still have to try to dance 6 feet apart, which is impossible.
Yeah.
So it's you get this sense of normalcy, but at the same time, I still think it's an illusion, because it's so to go backwards. And in fact, out here in the Northwest, we just went back again. We're not in full lockdown, but now everything is limited capacity. Hours are super limited, and the only places that are really doing shows are the kind of establishments that never really cared too much about what the different professionals were saying about the pandemic.
Yeah, yep.
It's the I can't wear a mask because you're taking away my freedom crowd.
Yeah.
So we don't want to run to subjugate ourselves to them, and for us, we are itching to do live shows, but I personally, we would feel terrible if we prematurely started doing shows, people come out, people get sick, and we're responsible in some way for the illness or forbid a death of one of our fans. That would be devastating.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that was the thing that was happening here as well. There were so many people out there that were being vocal and saying, oh, we want clubs back open, we want gig venues back open. But then you talk to the artists and they said exactly the same thing as you. The last thing they wanted to do was be the band that was on the front page of our daily newspaper saying their concert spread the next wave of COVID. So yeah, it was really interesting. You had these vocal people, but they were not representing artists at all.
Yeah, it's kind of divisive because it really is this, and I get it. I empathize. Like I can't wait to start doing shows, start going to shows. I miss so many people that I get it. Like you get stir crazy, you get cabin fever, and your judgment starts to lapse, and you start becoming more selfish. I mean, to be honest, like it's pure selfishness, and you want what you want right now, and you don't want to wait anymore. But you're not thinking outside your own kind of myopic, point of view. It's like, your actions can affect a great number of people. For example, you look at the Sturgis motorcycle rally.
Yeah.
And how they had that without a care in the world. And then from that, like, how many cases? Like 200,000 cases came from that? It's just like, get out of here.
Well, mate, I guess I know we are running out of time very, very quickly, and I could talk to you for ages, but I know we have to wrap up. So I guess my last question will be, what would you like to say to your fans out there before they go out and grab a copy of this album? Because I know there's still a lot of fans out there that can't wait to sit down and listen to this album.
Well, I mean, the biggest thing I want to say to everyone out there is we are endlessly grateful for all the support. We wouldn't, I like, kind of throw back to what you said earlier, is like, I never dreamed that 10 years later, we'd still be doing shows, that we'd be touring, that we would be on, like, a really beautiful label with, that is run by great people. And, if it wasn't for all the people, all the fans, I hate even using the word fans, because to me it is like family.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for everyone out there, like, we wouldn't still be doing this. Like, there's been so many times that we've been on the edge of just being like, screw it, like, let's just call it quits. But there's always something, there's always someone that says thing at the right time that reminds us why we do things. And so we appreciate everyone out there. To me, Bring Out the Dead, even though we wrote it before the pandemic, it really is kind of like a tribute to all the people that have been there with us, because, to us, it's our most cohesive album to date, and the one that I feel the most proud of. Our first one on a label, our first one to actually have like a full color lyric booklet, which for me is like a huge deal, because I'm that kid. I'm like almost 41, and I remember going to the store and buying a CD and opening it up and having the lyric booklet and being super excited about that.
Yeah, me too.
So it's just, we want everyone to stay safe and be healthy, and we will get through all this. We will see you back on the road again, and we'll have, all the music to play. And in the meantime, you can pick up Bring Out the Dead and become familiar with it, so that way we can all sing along, because nothing is more energizing than being in a crowd with a bunch of people and hearing them sing the lyrics back at you. That is just like intoxicating.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for chatting to us today. It's been an absolute honor, and hopefully one day we get to see you in Australia. If not, I am sure at some stage I will come and see you in the States.
Oh, please come to the States. But yes, we would love to play Australia. Oh my God, forget it. That would be...
Alright, well, I'll let you go, but thank you so much again for chatting to us, and hopefully we get to chat again soon.
I hope so, yeah, anytime. I
Awesome.
really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me.
No problem, mate. I'll let you go. See you later.
Take care.
Bye. You too. Stay safe.
Thanks, you too. Bye.